Hello everybody, this is ManuS and welcome back to another Legends of Runeterra review video. Last video we took a look at the balance changes in the latest patch 2.1.0 and now, as promised, we're going to take a look at all the new cards from the Aphelios champion expansion. The first sort of mini champion expansion that we've had in the game, and that comes with a handful of new cards in addition to the new champion Aphelios. So I'm gonna discuss all of the cards and give you my thoughts on them. But before we dive right in, you know the drill. Hit the subscribe button down below if you haven't yet to not miss out on future content. So let's take a look. Alright, so first off we obviously have Aphelios. Aphelios is a 3-cost 3/3 Nightfall champion. On Nightfall, you pick a moon weapon to create in hand. There are 5 moon weapons that have different effects. They are not visible here right now, so can't show them to you. But they were displayed in a prior article. Like, they are all 2-cost slow spells that have a specific effect, and then each of them can phase 2 different of the other 5 weapons. So that creates basically sort of an interesting decision tree of which weapon you're gonna get next once you've phased stuff. Each round, the first time you play 2 other cards, create the phased moon weapon in hand if you don't already have one. So basically you want to use your moon weapon right away, ideally as one of the 2 cards, to phase the next one. And then basically keep phasing moon weapons away. And after you cast 4 moon weapons, he levels. So he actually levels kinda slow. Takes a while. The good thing is that it's not seen, so if your first Aphelios dies, the progress still is relevant for the second Aphelios you might draw. Although once he levels, he turns into a 4/4 quick attack, and still phases weapons for you. But in addition, the moon weapons you cast cost 1 less, so it's much less of a commitment to do so, and a little easier to keep chaining them, basically. So all in all, pretty interesting card. Obviously, you kind of want to put him in a deck that has a fairly low curve, has an easier time to sort of keep phasing weapons. But a 3-cost 3/3 that turns into a 4/4 quick attack, and the massive impact and value you get from the moon weapons, like for example 2 mana deals 3 damage and stuff like that, is pretty big. So he looks like a fairly strong and interesting champion. Looking forward to experiment with him. Next we have Gifts from Beyond. You pick a moon weapon to create in hand, so that's an additional card that can sort of help him level a bit. I'm not sure how playable this is going to be, because basically it doubles the cost of moon weapons, making them much, much worse. So my guess would be the card's not very playable, probably. Next we have the Flight. It's a 1-cost 2/1 elusive, and once it hits the enemy Nexus, you draw a card and shuffle the Flight into the top 3 cards of your deck. So it's basically like a one-time attack 1-drop, but replaces itself. So kind of like deals 2 damage to the opponent and draws you a card, plus you can draw into it in the next 3 turns again to do it again. It's a bit of a weird card. It's a bit hard to evaluate without like messing around with it. My guess would be it's pretty specific and probably not very good, but maybe there's a way to sort of abuse it a bit, and maybe there's like one deck that it's going to be good in. But in general, I don't think it's a very appealing card. It's just kind of weird. It's not really aggressive, not really defensive. It's this kind of weird gimmicky card that is pretty narrow, I think, in its application, but maybe it finds a home. Then we have Starbone, 2-cost burst spell. If you behold the messenger, grant celestial allies everywhere +1/+1. So this basically only makes sense in a deck with like Sketcher, Zoe, and like the new card. Which one was it? There's one that gives you I think there was another one that gives you cheap Celestials. Oh yeah, here, the Fangs. Invoke a Celestial card that costs 3 or less. So that gives you more chances to find a messenger and also make the cheap Celestial units you get from these cards more impactful. But all in all, I think the card's way too situational to probably even make a deck. But if it makes a deck, it's probably going to be one with all those cards that I mentioned. Then we have the Sky Shadows. When I'm summoned, refill 2 mana if you behold a Nightfall card. So that's kind of cool and interesting. Makes Nightfall activations easier. Lets you use the mana on something like a Moon Weapon for Aphelios and stuff like that. And at 3/1, it's fragile, but it fares fairly well in combat, which is noteworthy. But 1 health, 2 drops is always a bit wonky, so a bit hard to say. But the fact that it effectively costs 0 mana makes it at least worth experimenting with if your deck has enough spells to make it matter. Because, yeah, 2 cost 3/1 that effectively is a 0 cost 3/1 is still pretty appealing in terms of tempo. And then we have the Fangs. It's a 4 cost 3/2 that once you play it, you invoke a Celestial card that costs 3 or less. So 4 cost 3/2 lifesteal. And then we have a new landmark. Each round, the first time you play 2 other cards, refill 2 mana and grant your strongest ally +1/+1. So yeah, I'm not sure how good this card's going to be. It's kind of expensive, and then you have to keep playing 2 cards, which isn't that easy. But it's kind of an interesting card, and maybe there's like some kind of intricate strategy to build around. But it's pretty specific. To get back to the Fangs, I think the card's actually pretty solid. In a lot of decks, defensive lifesteal unit. It's a bit expensive, obviously, for the stats because you get the invoke, but it still does some decent trading while keeping you healthy, and then provides you with extra tools and resources, making the card overall pretty interesting and possibly showing up in a couple of decks. So Skycharge actually belongs to a unit. I don't know why they put Skycharge in the article, but in the gallery, but not the unit it belongs to. It actually belongs to a 5 cost 5/4 Overwhelm called the Cloven Way. It's a Targon unit, of course, and on Nightfall, it casts Skycharge when you play it, so it's basically a Nightfall summon skill. Stun an enemy if it's a follower, stun it again at the next round start. So that's actually a pretty neat, sort of more mid-rangey Nightfall card. So we have a bit more stun support that isn't Leona, so there might even be like an Aphelios, Yasuo, sort of Targon Nightfall thing, because there's also a stun spell among the weapons and stuff. So there's some interesting potential there. And then we get 1 card for each other region. First off, we have Flurry of Fists. It's a 3 cost burst spell, granted an +1/+0 and quick attack. If it already has quick attack, granted double attack instead. So that's a pretty cool card, and there are a couple of interesting uses here. Works interesting with stuff like Draven, for example, is one of the cards that comes to mind, and so on. So yeah, this is definitely a card that people will be experimenting with, and we'll see if there's a competitive deck that makes use of this. But I wouldn't be too surprised if there is. And then we have Gluttony, the 3 cost fast spell. You kill an ally with Last Breath to summon a follower from your deck that costs 1 more. So this is another like a bit Bursing Pot like card, or rather other similar spells in Magic that lets you sort of chain up. This requires you to play Last Press units, so it's much more limited, but it also guarantees that you get value, because if you use it on Last Press value, you trigger on a Last Press unit, you trigger the Last Press, and so on. So just kind of a cool, interesting card to mess around with. We'll see if there's anything major here. I haven't explored the card yet, but we'll probably do that on the next stream. Then we have Powder Pandemonium, which is actually a bit like what some people have been suggesting as a metric for like changing Riptide Rex in the past. You summon a Powder Monkey and give a random enemy vulnerable this round for each time you've activated Plunder this game. And that's the part that I mean, like there's a bunch of people that have been saying like Rex should shoot for every time you activated Plunder this game, so you have to build around it more and stuff like that. So it's kind of interesting that they actually ended up using this kind of metric on this card. It's kind of an interesting card actually. You can do some reasonably powerful stuff. The problem is though that with the very limited board space in the game, it's actually kind of awkward and quite restricted, so I'm not sure if it's actually going to be that good. Like the effect's kind of cool, but once you think about the board limitations, it quickly becomes a lot less appealing. And we have the new Demacia card, Molten Breath, the slow spell. An ally with Fury strikes the two weakest enemies, so another sort of dragon support card. It's not bad, it's decent, it's dragon support, it's a 6-cost card, so it works with Lux, so maybe they're trying to push sort of like a Lux Shyvana type mid-range deck a bit more, or maybe just generally trying to make a more mid-rangey board controlling dragon deck in general more appealing. Who knows, like I doubt it's going to be a top tier deck, but maybe there's something decent here. Then we have Stress Testing, the 1-cost burst spell. Remove Fleeting from all cards in the enemy hand, and when it's discarded, you draw 1 Fleeting. So if I understand that correctly, if you discard it, it doesn't do the first part, and if you play it, it doesn't do the second part. So it's either, you can either cast it to make cards non-fleeting, which is pretty bad and rarely going to come up. Like there will be situations where, I don't know, you pick a card, have like 2 cards left, or like at least 1 card that you don't want to lose, and then you might end up playing this naturally from hand to preserve it, but it's still not optimal because you're investing a card to do so. But the fact that you can sort of discard this to a Rummage, for example, to draw a card, and also make it even easier to level a Twisted Fate is pretty interesting. So this card might be quite appealing, less so for the typical discard aggro, because there it's not that great of a fit and takes away slots from like real cards that have impact and are aggressive. But in something like the Fizz Twisted Fate deck, this actually could be interesting in some number, even if only as a one-off or something. Then we have Freljord card, Troll Gifts. It's a 2-cost burst spell trick. You grant an ally regeneration. If they already have it, grant them +2/+2 instead. So it's basically like a super cheap perma buff on regeneration units, which is pretty strong, or just lets you like surprise the opponent by regenerating a big unit that's pretty low on health and stuff like that, and then it's going to become really annoying for the opponent. This card actually seems pretty decent. Not sure if there's quite enough support for it yet, because I think if you don't have a decent amount of regeneration units, the card's actually not that appealing just for giving regeneration. But the backup option of giving regeneration if you don't have a target makes the +2/+2 part pretty appealing. But if you have to use it too often for regeneration, I think it's not going to be that great of a card. And last but not least, we have the Noxus slow spell. It's a 5-cost slow spell, Wild Claws. An ally strikes an enemy. If it has Overwhelm, deal excess damage to the enemy Nexus. So it's kind of like, not quite like Atrocity, but it's a bit like Atrocity in a very sort of situational way. It's slow, it requires a unit to have Overwhelm, and it requires your opponent to have a unit, and ideally as small as possible of a unit. But yeah, maybe there's some use for it. It seems like just listed, there are a lot of ifs and specific necessities to make this card really shine, and otherwise it's like a 5-cost slow spell bad Concerted Strike, since it only works on with a single unit, making it much less good at killing bigger units. So not too hot of a card. But yeah, all in all, a couple of interesting things here. nice amount of new cards. We got like, I think 14, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, plus Aphelios. So yeah, 15 new cards in total. Pretty nice mini expansion, good size, I think. I was saying like I would like to see something like 10-ish cards with Aphelios. We got 15 in total, so yeah. Got what I was hoping for, basically, even though at this point I kind of expected to only get Aphelios and nothing else. Yeah. How do you feel about the new cards? What do you think about my assessment? As usual, let me know in the comments down below what you think about the new cards and any potential ideas or questions you have. That's it again for this time. Before you leave, you know the drill. Hit the like button, subscribe for more, turn on notification icon to not miss out on future content, share it with your friends, and so on and so forth. Thanks for watching, everybody. I'm your host, ManuS. I'll see you next time. Bye.